only 1% of that's 6,000 children go there for free.
1%.
1%. I mean, that's appallingly low.
This is my point. That should be 50 times higher.
Of course it should. But then, you've talked about sort of a need blind system, which obviously would be a step in the right direction. But what people found...
Can you hear that clicking?
Yeah.
That's a nail in the tyre. I've got to get that taken out, so that's a puncture repair.
Can't afford to take loads of disadvantaged kids who aren't bright scholars or excellent sports people or fantastic musicians, which is what they do. They tend to cream off state school students to boost their own
So you're saying they're going to business effectively. Robert, let me just ask you lastly, if I could, what do you think the benefits of going to a private school are? What do they give their pupils that state schools don't or can't?
Well, I think you only need to look at the political makeup of the current government. Look at the cabinet. So you've got 70% of Boris Johnson's cabinet attended private school. I mean, that is quite a marketable thing to be able to tell parents when you're advertising the advantages of your private school. Look, go to this school, and you never know, your child might actually become Prime Minister of this country. And that's a genuine, real chance. How many other schools, how many state schools can make that claim? How many state schools would actually say you've got a chance of going to Oxford?
I know, but I'm interested in specifically what it is about these schools that make that the case, whether there's a genuine benefit. And I think there is, otherwise people wouldn't spend thousands and thousands of pounds to send their kids there. There's a genuine benefit that comes from smaller class sizes, that comes from better facilities, better teaching potentially, and so on. But I also think the system disproportionately rewards, university system particularly, people who have gone to those schools. That's my view on it. Robert, good to speak to you. Really appreciate your time this afternoon. Robert Buckake, author of Posh Boys, How the English Public Schools Ruin Britain. But who I really want to hear from is you. What do you make about this debate? What do you think about private schools? Should we be proud of them? Should we reform them in some way? Should we abolish them? 0345 60 973. It's 120.
This is LBC.
Join me, Rachel Johnson, as I sit down with women at the forefront of change. Recently, I was joined by Emily Thornberry.
He spent his time trying to goad us into having a general election. We should have had, if we were going to have an election on one issue, it's called a referendum. We should have had a referendum.
Rachel Johnson's Difficult Women. Listen to the full podcast on Global Player.
At Lidl, we're big on a summer of quality for all. So it's time to get those Barbies out with 2 Vermondo vegan burgers, just $1.59. 2 Seabass fillets with butter for $3.69. And 6 British Big Dog hot dog sausages, just $2.99. Now that's big on quality and always Lidl on price. Subject to availability, selected stores, excludes NI.
Selling your car doesn't have to mean haggling with strangers or pretending to be a car connoisseur. Simply sell your car the motorway way. It's the new sell your car from home way. All while car dealers compete to give you the best price way. It's the you could get up to £1,000 more way. This is the new way to sell your car. This is the motorway. Sell your car at motorway.co.uk. For pricing claim verification, visit motorway.co.uk.
Today's $1.99 wrap of the day is the garlic mayo chicken one, guaranteed to cause flavour envy. And now with new and improved grilled chicken. Picture a soft tortilla wrap filled with, delicious grilled chicken.
Garlicky mayo.
Today's $1.99 garlic mayo chicken one. So big on flavour, everyone will want some. Only at McDonald's. From 11 a.m.
The Podcast Show 2022 is coming to Islington, London, May 25th and 26th, where the international world of podcasting awaits you. Featuring world-class speakers Johnny Bourne, Emily Maitlis, Elizabeth Day, and hundreds more, as well as the biggest brands and unmissable live shows. Day passes on sale now. Use promo code GLOBAL and get 20% off. Book yours now at thepodcastshowlondon.com.
Hey, Harry. Hello, mate. Any tips for the big game?
It's a tough one to call. Your best bet is to ask Michael Owen. Here, Michael.
Hello, Gaffer.
You got any tips for the football?
Oh, I think there'll be plenty of goals.
No, I can't see that. Both defences are strong.
Yeah, but the little fella up top's lightning.
Sorry, lads, I've got to go. I've got money on the next race.
Whether you listen to Harry or Michael, make your best bet at BetVictor. Search online for latest offers. 18 plus, be gamble aware. Please gamble responsibly.
This is LBC with Ben Kentish.
1:22 the time. Lots of you calling in on our conversation this afternoon about private schools, whether it's right for the Education Secretary to call on us to be proud of them, or whether we need to do something else, whether we should abolish them. Let's go to Peter in Reading. Afternoon, Peter. What do you think?
Yeah, hi Ben. How are you?
Good. Thank you. You?
Good. Yeah, not too bad.
Good.
I'm obviously that Rob guy you had on there.
Yeah.
Is he a parent?
No idea. Why?
No. Well, I went to school in the 1980s to comprehensive in Reading. Absolute rubbish education. Teachers' strikes. Left with very few qualifications. Run a business. Sent both my kids to private school. Which actually saves in our area, Wokingham, we come under Wokingham Borough Council, they spend only £4,000 per year on state pupils. It's the lowest in the country, and it's an affluent area. So we send our kids to private school. We're saving the taxpayer £4,000 per child per year. It never gets mentioned.
But Peter, that's not why you're doing it. You're doing it because you think your children will get an advantage over the kids who are getting £4,000 a year.
Education.
Exactly.
Private schools do for kids, and it gives them confidence when they actually go out in the world. They don't necessarily give the best exam results, but they give a good education, they've got manners, and...
Hold on. Let's not say that state school kids don't have manners. Let's not say that. I don't think that's true. I think there's a lot of people.
You're general.
No, you said private schools give you manners, and the logical implication there is that state schools don't.
No, that's not true at all.
Okay, if that's not what you're saying.
The thing is, you sit there, you Labour bash the private system. Yes, they are businesses.
Not bashing it.
When it came to the pandemic,
asking if it's fair.
Is it fair?
Yeah.
Life isn't fair. Would I have wanted to go to a private school? Yes. Could my parents afford it? No. So most people that send their kids to private school, hard-working people, you shouldn't knock them for that.
But a lot of people who can't afford to send their kids to private schools are very hard-working people too.
That's right. My parents couldn't.
Yeah.
But going to university. Look at the grammar school system. We have a grammar school in Reading. Its catchment area goes all the way down to Southampton. They take the cream of the pupils, and everyone knows it. Surely what we should do as a country is give every child the best education. And just because of the failings of a small proportion of state schools shouldn't mean that we should bash the private sector.
So, Peter, I agree with you. Look, I think everyone wants what's best for their kids. If there are private schools that are better than the local state schools, I think you are absolutely within your rights and to some degree to your credit to send your kids to the best school that there is in your area that you can afford. We're not bashing the states. We're not bashing the private sector. We're saying they clearly do something better than, not all, but a lot of state schools. That's why people like you spend, and I don't know what you're paying, but quite a lot of money to send your children there. It's about fairness. It's about whether you can level up, to use a phrase, the state school system while you have, by your own admission, other types of school, creaming off the best students, and I would suggest the best teachers. That's what this is about.
You'd be quite surprised how many parents who have children with difficulties, ADHD, that choose the private sector because they know it's better for their child. But if you had ADHD in the state school, you get a one-to-one help in the classroom. You don't get that in the private sector. I just think every child in this country is entitled to an education, but just because of the failings of government after government, that's why the state schools aren't as good as they should be. But that's not a fault of the private sector.
No, you're right to say that, Peter. Let me just ask you about this Oxbridge question. The Vice-Chancellor of Cambridge University, very, very clear, and he says it's important to be very, very clear, that they are trying hard to reduce the number of students who are like your kids. What do you think of that, i.e. have gone to a private school?
Well, I think, to be honest, if you go to one of the Oxbridge, my kids aren't going to Oxbridge. If you're going to Oxbridge, then it should be based simply on ability. It doesn't matter where you come from. I mean, there are bursaries to send people to university, and it should be done on ability. There's no point going to Oxford or Cambridge if you haven't got the ability to do the courses.
How are you judging ability? How should they judge people's ability?
I mean, the university's intake is based on lots of things: personal statements, exam results. There's lots of things. I think private schools teach their pupils interview techniques and how to present themselves to the university.
Exactly. So it's not just about ability. So it's not just about ability. It's about how well trained they are.
Okay. It's about going. If you get to a job interview, you can look up at that company that you're going to, do a bit of research, ask some questions, and if you're up against someone who doesn't get that preparation, then you're obviously going to probably have an advantage. And private schools are very good.
It's not like that. It's not like that, Peter. It's not like that. It's the equivalent of you going for a job interview and your uncle works in the firm, so he's told you exactly what to say because he's worked there for 10 years and trained you how to answer every question. And someone else who may be just as able, if not more so, they go to the same interview, and because their uncle doesn't work there, they haven't had that advantage. That's the analogy. Or it's as someone who goes for a job interview but can't afford a nice suit and a nice shirt and tie, and someone else gets the job because they look more polished, even though the other person may be just as able to do the job. That's the analogy. And that's why I say, when you say it should be on ability, absolutely right. Nadeem Zahawi says today it should be on merit and evidence. What on earth does merit mean? Because we take merit to mean, as you sort of just said there, exam results, the quality of your personal statement, or how well you are good at interview, how good you are at interview. All of those things massively benefit people who go to private school because those schools have the resources and the know-how to train their kids into how to get into Oxbridge. Now, I think that means that people don't get in on merit. Lots of them do. Let's be clear, lots of them do. Lots of people at Oxbridge fully deserve to be there. There are a hell of a lot of people at Oxbridge who don't. I went to a comprehensive, then I went to Cambridge, and I'll tell you this, there are a lot of people at my school who were naturally smarter and more able, had more merit, to use Nadeem Zahawi's word, than people I met at university. Not all, of course, but there was definitely an overlap. The difference was those kids at school weren't taught, weren't trained, weren't tutored in how to get in. Now, Peter, I don't know if you'd say that means they don't have they don't meet the criteria. Nadeem Zahawi might say they don't have the merit. I think that is absolute nonsense, because genuine merit is not the same as exam results. It's not the same as interview technique. Too often people equate merit with those things, and that merit generally means whether or not your parents came from a comparatively wealthy background. I think, and this is, I think, undisputable, although people do dispute it, that if you got more kids from state schools and more kids from disadvantaged backgrounds into Oxbridge, standards don't go down, as has been suggested this week, they go up, because you are getting more of the genuinely talented, genuinely smart kids, and less of those that are perfectly smart, not saying they're not saying they're stupid, but the less of those that have had the training that they need to get in, the polish that they need as things stand on the current system to get in. It doesn't decrease standards, it increases standards. And we know, don't we? We know for a fact that state school kids with the same A-levels do better than private school kids at university who have got the same grades. Why? Because they've had to have more natural talent to get there, and they've probably had to work harder. So this is when we talk about merit and we talk about ability. Let's be very clear on what we're talking about here. Let's be very, very clear. Peter in Reading, lovely to speak to you. Come back to your calls on this in just a moment. Lots and lots of you calling and get through as many as we can. For now, though, let's get some news headlines, which at 1:31 come from Simon Morgan.
The G7 group of nations is promising to keep putting economic pressure on Russia following its invasion of Ukraine. The countries also say they'll continue to supply weapons to Kyiv. Labour says ministers are risking a major row with Brussels at the worst possible time. The UK and the European Union have been involved in negotiations to sort out trade rules covering Northern Ireland after Brexit. And the president of Sinn Féin says Boris Johnson cannot play games with the people of Ireland and Northern Ireland. Speaking to reporters within the past half an hour, Mary Lou McDonald said there is a need for a functioning government in the north. LBC weather, a dry and warm afternoon for most areas, patchy cloud across Scotland and Northern Ireland with a high of 22.
This is LBC.
At Lidl, we're big on a summer of quality for all. So it's time to get those Barbies out with 2 Vermondo vegan burgers just $1.59, 2 Seabass fillets with butter for $3.69, and 6 British Big Dog hot dog sausages just $2.99. Now that's big on quality and always Lidl on price. Subject to availability, selected stores excludes NI.
Wearing glasses can make you look intelligent.
That's right.
But not in William's case.
What? Sorry, what?
William knows pi to 30 decimal places. Yeah, he knows the whole of Hamlet's soliloquy, and he knows how to rebuild a car engine.
It's true.
But he didn't know that stylish, well-made glasses start from £19 at Specsavers. So his expensive glasses that he bought elsewhere just make him look a little bit daft.
Oh dear.
Complete single-vision glasses for £19 at Specsavers. You know you should.
Collect a 25,000 Avios welcome bonus with the new Barclaycard Avios Plus credit card when you spend £3,000 in your first 3 months. That could whisk you from everyday to getaway. Check your eligibility now. Search Barclaycard Avios Plus. Representative example, 72.4% APR representative variable. Purchase rate per annum, 23.9% variable. Based on a credit limit of £1,200. £20 monthly fee. Subject to application and financial status. Eligibility and conditions apply. Welcome bonus for new customers only.
Get up and at it, as my mother used to say. Get moving. Get your skates on. Put your hair down in the race run. Get behind the wheel. Get picking up and dropping off. Get busy. Get deliveries done. And get home to see mom. Whatever the mission, Enterprise Rent-A-Car helps over 100,000 every day.
Ben Kentish on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
1:34 the time now here on LBC. This is Ben Kentish. Johnny's called from Horsham to talk about our conversation about private schools, whether or not we should abolish them, whether Nadeem Zahawi, the Education Secretary, is right to say we should be proud. Johnny, what do you think?
Yeah, well, it's different things for people that are defending them. They think they are a fair and equitable thing, but it isn't just the schools that is the advantage. It is almost a solid group of wealthy people with wealthy children that get the best routes into jobs. And you touched on it just now, actually. It's not having the uncle that will allow you to have the interview. It will be the uncle that will give you the job. And I've experienced this. I'm very working class. I'm from Plymouth. I'm living in a wealthy area now. I've witnessed it firsthand, and I've witnessed it with my son for university, where you have got other students whose parents can pay for the accommodation. Quite often what will happen from my part of the world is parents can't afford the after-school clubs, so their children don't get the support, even if state schools, to compete with private schools. Quite often they have to come home and get their own meals because both parents are working full-time and exhausted. And you do have this where it is, really. And I understand how parents want their children to be advantaged.
Oh yeah, Johnny, I think you're right. There's no blame on the parents here. Parents just want what's best for their children. The question's about whether the system...
What is merit in evidence? For how he was saying, what is it merit? Is the merit of who do you know? Is the evidence your financial status to apply to it? The reason why we have Lee Anderson saying you can live for 30p a day, he's like a child who's walked halfway through a movie. He's got no idea how expensive the cost of living is. And that's where there is a problem, really. People need to be equally advantaged to it.
It needs to be a level playing field, Johnny, is what we said. I think I completely agree with that. Nadeem's argument about tilting the system away from children who attend private school, but if it's already massively tilted in their favour, then why is that a bad thing? 0345 60 60 973. Get back to your calls in just a moment. First, we'll give an update. There's big development today related to this issue, in fact, with universities at least. The government has today announced it's cutting ties with the NUS, the National Union of Students, over links and suggestions and allegations of anti-Semitism. Jonathan Sakadotti is a journalist, broadcaster and leading campaigner against anti-Semitism. Jonathan, thanks for your time this afternoon. Tell us, what's prompted this and what do you make of the government's decision?
Afternoon, Ben. I think this is a positive move on the part of the government, but I think it's a massive disaster for the NUS and a massive shame as well for students, because obviously it's got a role to play, and being caught up in something like this is really a sign of how it's not just failing Jewish students through anti-Semitism, but also failing more students by not actually doing what it's meant to do, which is look out for them rather than engage in some rather dubious politics, which has then led them into this history of anti-Semitism. And what's led to it really has been this increase in anti-Semitism on campuses, on universities, with Jewish students saying they feel less safe and that they have more frequent occurrences of anti-Semitism, anti-Jewish racism, to give it a different name. And I think that those people who rise to the top in the NUS have sometimes been shown to have very dubious or anti-Semitic views of their own. And for example, at the moment we have this case of the new president who had been tweeting things that were seen to be anti-Semitic, who'd also referred to this Islamic chant, which is one about Jews being massacred in years gone by historically. We've had other previous presidents like Maria Bartia saying that she believed that Birmingham University was a Zionist outpost in higher education because it had a large Jewish society. All sorts of things like this. I mean, just also recently there was the issue of them inviting a rapper to a student event who was deeply offensive to many Jewish students because of things he'd said, and when they raised it, they told the Jews they could sit in another room.
Is this part of a wider issue, do you think, Jonathan, around anti-Semitism amongst students, amongst the younger generation? Or is it limited, as I suspect you probably might suggest it is, to a sort of fringe of student activists on parts of the left?
So I reckon that is probably the case, because if the NUS is anything like student politics was quite some time ago when I was a student, it doesn't really involve most students. I certainly never felt any particular affiliation or sympathy for the NUS as a student, and haven't done since. So I think that these sorts of bodies often attract hardcore politicos, often from the further ends of the left as well. Which is not to dismiss them, that's perfectly valid. I think often students have more left-wing policies and politics, but that doesn't mean they've got to be anti-Semitic and racist against Jewish people, quite the contrary. And I think that's what I said about it being a failing. I think it is a failing to all students if their so-called representative body is actually engaging in this sort of very unfortunate racism, rather than engaging in the things that it should be doing to help make their lives better at a time when they have very real challenges. I think Robert Halfon actually referred the NUS to the Charities Commission because of this anti-Semitism problem recently. So it's really something that I think has reached a boiling point. I think it's been going on for a very long time, and it may be the result of some very fanatical members of the NUS, but I don't think that makes it any better. I think that's making life for students on campus worse. And I think it's also worth remembering that places like NUS, bodies like the NUS, have often been seen as the place where the leaders of tomorrow might be born. Indeed, some of our MPs now were very active in the NUS some years ago when they were students, and I think that's another big problem about this. If we're breeding this kind of racism within the NUS now, that indicates there'll be further problems down the line in broader mainstream politics, and that's why I think it's very important that the government is keen to try and deal with this problem properly.
Jonathan, great to speak to you. Jonathan Sakadotti, journalist, broadcaster and leading campaigner against anti-Semitism. Worth noting, the NUS, for their part, so they're disappointed by the government's decision, accusing the government of disengaging with NUS rather than seeking to engage with us directly. They say they have launched an independent investigation into complaints of anti-Semitism and will be taking that forward in what they call a serious and proper way. Adding, we look forward to working with the government constructively on this matter. I'm sure we'll keep an eye on that one as it unfolds. Back to your calls for now, though, on private schools. Rawa in Hampstead Garden suburb. Rawa, afternoon.
Hi, afternoon. I mean, first of all, your last caller made a few points which just aren't true. which one of them being that if you have ADHD in a state school, you just get a one-to-one. It's incredibly hard. Most of those parents go to tribunal, they have to fight for it. I mean, that's one of the reasons that state schools, I think, are a bit more challenging, because you do have, a wider breadth of type of student, and teachers have to accommodate those students, and the class is much bigger. I like to went to comprehensive and went on to Cambridge. I had to get the same grades as someone who went to Westminster at a time when half of that year would go to Oxbridge. I don't think that was fair. I certainly knew some people at university who were more polished than bright.
Yeah.
And the bottom line is that people send their kids to private school because it confers an advantage.
Of course, or why would they do
it? That is why they are angry. Why would they be paying 20, 25, 30 grand? And the bottom line is, I don't even think you should say 7%, maybe 15%, because a lot of those schools are very academically selective. So I don't think it's necessarily to compare